Speaking of participating, if you live in the state of Louisiana, my home state, tomorrow, Louisiana legislators will return to the state capitol for a special veto override session, giving lawmakers a chance to once again pass HB 648, among other measures, which would protect children from experimental, harmful, and permanently life-altering gender procedures, including sterilization and mutilation. This legislation overwhelmingly passed on a bipartisan basis in both chambers of the Louisiana State House before Democrat Governor John Bel Edwards vetoed the measure. Now, the special session begins tomorrow at noon, so there's time for you to weigh in. In fact, need you to weigh in now. Join me now to discuss next steps and what may occur tomorrow is Gene Mills, president of the Louisiana Family Forum. Gene, welcome back to the program. I know you were on Friday, but we wanted to hit this one more time.
Tony, it's good to be with you and appreciate all that you do.
So let's talk about, it's actually the first hurdle has been crossed, and that is the legislature is coming into an override session, so that in itself is a victory. Now we simply have to get them to vote to override the governor in his veto of this bill protecting minor children. So where does that stand?
That's correct. Generally, veto override sessions are seen as optional, not obligatory. But this one had so much energy, and so many moms and pops back home communicated with their lawmakers, and lawmakers knew they couldn't let this set. So they're headed back tomorrow at noon. We'll be meeting with the Senate president and the House Speaker at 11 o'clock with a couple of dozen pastors for a time of prayer. We're inviting the public, concerned listeners like yours, to join us at the Capitol tomorrow at 11:30 at the Rotunda, and we will help them communicate with their lawmakers the necessity to say no thank you to groomers who hope to access children in Louisiana.
All right, Gene, so let's, I know we've talked about this multiple times, but we may have folks tuning in, for the first time, hearing about what is going to be taking place at the legislature. So let's walk through the bills that the legislature already passed, that the governor vetoed, that they'll have a second shot at tomorrow.
Well, technically, the one that's got the most energy is House Bill 648, gave ferment. Some in the leadership and some in the minority within the leadership want that to be the only subject matter that's brought up. Of course, lawmakers, some 26 of whom saw some of their measures go down in flames, whether it was election integrity, whether it dealt with pronouns in the schools, whether it dealt with parental permission to deal with gender identity subject matter, and whether it could be discussed in the schools. All those issues were vetoed, and all are subject to be called up. It's simply by a simple motion of the author to bring the measure forward. Now, it takes a simple majority in order to call it out of order, and it takes a 2/3 majority to say to the governor, overruled.
So you think it's just on the House Bill 648, the one dealing with the transgender experimental surgeries and drugs, is where the momentum is for the legislature to override the governor?
That's correct. And I think that's a foregone conclusion. The governor probably knows that. He's doing what he can to peel off support, and he does have authority. He's got the power of the pen, and he's got the power of appointment. Now, you got some lawmakers who feel like we can go further, and there's some strategy that's being discussed as to whether or not we should position other bills first in hopes that there may be 3 or 4 overrides. That's still developing and still being discussed, and it's likely. My sense is we need to get that bill 648 out, needs to be overridden, and whatever else you can handle needs to come up next. And that's where the leadership lands.
So Gene, between now and tomorrow, citizens, our viewers, listeners, need to be calling their state senator and their state representative and letting them know that they would like to see them override the governor's veto of House Bill 648. So that number, folks, if you live in Louisiana, for the Senate is 225-342-2040. That's 342-2040. If you to contact your member of the House, it's 342-6945. 342-6945. I have that number down from memory. Gene Mills, Thanks so much, and we will be praying for your success on behalf of families tomorrow there, back home in Louisiana.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody in Louisiana, please join us tomorrow at noon.